drama, stories with winners and losers. Climate change is the drama. The sustainability journey will create winners, but also losers. We bring to you the simplicity of this story in a humble equation, the math of sustainability. Hello, Carlos, Stamati, and Adriana. It's a great pleasure to have you here to talk about the math of sustainability. Welcome today.
Thank you very much. Let's go for it.
Hi,
Wonderful.
Pedro.
So today we're going to talk about a lot of topics that is related to math. We really want to go deeper in the topic of sustainability. So for all of you listening to us right now, buckle up because you will hear a equation that helps us to take action on sustainability topics. This will help you not at a company level, but at an individual level to understand what is behind the needed action that we keep talking of sustainability here. My name is Pedro Pereira, and we have here right now the Green Live as part of the Sustainable Tech podcast. Carlos, I will hand over to you to talk to us about the sustainability math here.
Thank you very much, Pedro. And the first thing that we have to do is recognize how much we have done in the last 100 years as a species. I mean, we have solved really complicated problems: legal slavery, oil spills, HIV infections, children dying. It's incredible the number of things that we thought were very difficult to solve, and here we are. The numbers speak by themselves. Most of those problems are, let's say, under control. And we could continue talking about many of them: the oil spills, plane crash deaths, nuclear arms, hunger, ozone depletion, child labor, you name it. Now, in front of us, the biggest challenge of all times for humanity is climate change. And that climate change is very well represented in very small particles floating in the air. That's the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. I would dare say that that's the biggest problem that we have as humankind. So why don't we help all of you and help ourselves putting together a simple formula that describes how to explain and how to fix, because that's the beauty of equations, the problem and the challenge of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. And this is what is called the Kaya identity. So what you're going to see in front of you in a few seconds is just that formula. And that formula, don't get scared, even if you don't come from the world of maths, because it is very simple. It has 4 components, and each one of the 4 components is multiplying. Okay? So that means that if any of those components goes up, it multiplies the effect in all the other components, okay? And that happens for the 4 different components of this equation. Let's go and understand the equation. The first component is P. P stands for population, okay? So you know that the world's population is currently 7.7 billion, and according to the United Nations estimates, it's going to reach up to 9.7 billion in 2050 and 10.9 billion in 2100. So first part of the equation, we do have a problem because that's only expected to grow, okay? And I said expected. It doesn't have to go that way, but the expectation is that the population is going to grow. Let's jump to the second one, is the growth of GDP, gross domestic product per capita, is the GDP per capita. So basically, the OECD projects that the global GDP per capita will increase by 2.3% a year from 2021 to 2050. Whoops. Another problem, the second factor, the second multiplication factor is also growing. So this formula is only causing us headaches so far because both components that we visited are growing. Now, up to now, it's very easy to understand is how many people we have in the planet and how much domestic product each one of them is creating. Now, the third component is the energy intensity of the economy. So, how much energy we use per unit of gross domestic product. Okay. Let me tell you that here we have a little bit of a relief, but not enough. The energy intensity of the economy from 1990 to 2015 has improved 68%. Good. The only problem is that to meet the Paris two-degree objective, not the 1.5, the 2-degree objective, that annual pace of decline needs to accelerate and needs to almost double the rate of decrease that we have had so far. So yes, it's decreasing, but it's not decreasing fast enough. Okay, that's the energy intensity of the economy. How much energy we use to produce everything that we consume, to put it simply. Okay. And the last factor is the emissions intensity of the energy. So basically, is that energy that we're using to create the GDP clean or is it dirty? If it's clean, it will emit less CO2 to the atmosphere. If it's dirty, it will emit more CO2 to the atmosphere. Now, I have to say that the energy intensity of the economy, again, from 1990 to 2015, has improved 332%. So it's much cleaner than it used to be. Unfortunately, again, to miss the Paris agreements for 2 degrees, this annual pace of decline needs to increase almost 4 times. So this is what it is. This is the equation. This is the math. These are the 4 components of the greenhouse gas emissions to the air. And what we are going to do in the next 25 minutes is just hold your hand and discover a wealth of opportunities, that are in your hands as a consumer to improve these maths. That opportunities that are in your hands as a member of your company, to make sure that you provide to consumers the right products and services, so we all collectively as human beings can solve and tackle this problem. So let's start with the first one of these 4 components. I'm going to ask Pedro to explain the first one, P for population.
Well, Carlos, you said very well that, population increase is the foundation to affect all other variables of this equation. But it's not an easy one because, population goes close to something we have hold deeper in our lives, which is, people. We love people. We are a people. We are human beings. So how can we mix the right size of population with the worst effects of climate change? And here, the foundation of that discussion is about education. Education is the foundation for us to understand how much we can have in terms of people, but also how much these people will have the responsibility to take care of the planet. So the first equation here will be the hardest one, but if we can create a culture that takes care of the planet for this generation and for the future generations, things will be so much more different, Carlos.
Indeed, that's the first component, and then we jump to the second component, which is the GDP per person. So, do you want to help us with that, Samatia?
Yes, I would like to share a graph that has all these components from the acquisition. So it has in green the GDP. With purple, the energy per GDP, and with yellow, the CO2 per energy. So the energy intensity and the CO2 intensity. So, and what we can see over the years, that as the GDP increases, also the CO2 increases, in taking into consideration, of course, that some improvements in the energy intensity and the CO2 intensities are being made over the years. So in 2008, we have started to see a decrease in GDP and some more improvements in the energy and the CO2. And we can see that the CO2 is decreasing, the CO2 footprint. This is the view of the world. And we can see also the view for the European Union, we can see the same thing. After 2018, once the GDP is decreasing, so it will be the next slide, once the GDP is decreasing, also the CO2 is decreasing. But this is what happened in the past. As also Pedro and Carlos mentioned, in the future, which is the next table, we can see an increase in the population. It is expected to be approximately 150% in 250 versus 210, and also an increase in GDP, 290. So if those two are increasing, then we need to take extra action so as to decrease the energy intensity and the carbon intensity. So we need to take some actions to decrease the GDP per capita. And there are different opinions here. That scientists believe that we cannot do something, some others believe that we can take actions, but a smarter way of use of the raw material, that means embrace the circular economy, can help to reduce the GDP and also maintain the growth. According to the European Parliament research, an increase of 1% of value added by economic activities related to longer product lifetimes could have an effect of 7.9 billion per year across the European economy. So the repair, the reuse, the recycling of products can create new revenue streams, can create new jobs, can stimulate innovation. And I have also another slide that gather everything that circular economy can help.
But before going to the next slide, Stamati, I think if we can stay in the previous one, this gives us tips not only as people, as consumers, but only for organizations. Let's look at it. Let's look at that image that you were projecting. There are several circles there. The sharing circle, but how do you share things that you buy? Are there platforms to share? Of course, we can see how we have platforms to share cars, we have platforms to share tools. So that's a new opportunity for many companies to reposition their products, repair, reuse, remanufacture, recycle. We were talking to different companies during the past week, from automotive manufacturers to fashion industry players that see a lot of potential in these new models. Pay per use in clothing, or what is the percentage of repurposed materials when you're building a car, etc., etc., etc. So all these circles that we see here, if you are part of an organization, part of a company, are business opportunities that are huge for you. Just in the circular economy, what we are seeing is that the materials that are disposed and have to be handled now differently are huge opportunities for many companies. So what I would like is, when you hear Matias' proposals or Adriana's proposals, Pedro's comments, you hear of your contribution as an individual, but also your opportunities and as an entrepreneur or as part of a company.
Yes, great comments, Carlos. And it's not only the companies and what the companies can do, it's also what the consumers can do. Everyone, each one of us can follow the circular economy model, right? We can reuse products, we can use second-hand markets, we can keep the products that we are buying for long, and try not to buy new products as possible. So it's a combination of what consumers can do, what companies can do, and which technologies their companies are using. And also, it is also on the government side, so that will embrace the circular economy models and embrace recyclability, reusals, and reduce of waste. So it is a combination of all three. And as a sum up, actually, because we have mentioned most of us, circular economy models, they generate income and boost economic growth. They create new jobs. They connect economic and ecological benefits, stimulates innovations, reach a new milestone in economic development, and reduce pressure on the environment, and of course, improve security of the supply of raw materials. So one way that we can help, let's say, minimize the GDP per capita capital is to move to a circular model. And I read somewhere something in a site that they mentioned that we are very good. We are doing a good job in producing products so as to bring those products in our door. Now we need to learn again, to learn new skills and learn how to take those products and take them back and put them back into the market. So this is a new way of thinking and a new mindset.
Thank you, Samatia. This takes us to the third component, the energy intensity of the economy. My proposal every time you read one of these sentences to change the word "de" for the word "my." The energy intensity of my economy. The energy intensity of my economy. So how can we still consume, because we need to consume, but at the same time minimize the energy needed to consume? And the good news is that we have the solution in our behavior. What if we consume proximity products? What if we consume recycled products? I would use less energy. What about low density packaging products? When you go and pick your products, choose those with small packaging. That's less energy. What about a better labeling system so we understand the energy intensity of the products we buy? That's a huge area of improvement for corporations, as we learn in our Sustainability Consumption Research 2021. So consumers want more information in the labels, want the labels that are gamified, QR codes. They need and they want to understand how to decrease the energy intensity of their consumption. What about new taxes for those that are high polluters? And that's completely in line with the new regulations coming in the European Union. It's called the carbon tax, something like that, carbon tax.
Border.
Don't remember. Thank you. Carbon border tax. So they can impose those measures, thank you, Tim, within the European Union, but they're also effectively imposing the same measures outside of the European Union. So what about eating less meat, having meatless days or meatless weeks? I would reduce the energy intensity of my consumption. What about if I still want to eat meat, of course, what about eating meat with a lower carbon footprint, chicken instead of lamb, for example? So apart from providing some ideas, a handful of ideas of how to reduce the energy intensity of our consumption, what I want to share with you is the joy of doing so. The joy of doing something with a purpose, the joy of embarking in a fight for good, and that's something that really, at least for me, it has been very meaningful in my life. But now let's jump into the fourth component. So Adriana, help us understand how we can lower the emission intensity of the energy that we use.
Sure, emissions intensity, it's about emissions, like the words say, but what are the emissions of the energy that we need to produce and consume? So in the equation, that's equal to the emissions, the GHG emissions slash energy. And we have seen that energy consumption is on the rise. The total consumption of primary energy resources is increasing worldwide. And oil is the most consumed primary energy source in the world, with 193 exajoules consumed in 2019. Most notably, of course, also the use of renewable resources is growing at a steady rate. In the past 2 decades, global consumption of renewables has risen exponentially from just 2.7 exajoules in 98 to almost 29 exajoules in 2019. So that's more than 10 times. However, this is not enough. The renewable energy that we are using, the percentage of renewable energy that we are using compared to the fossil one, it's basically not rising. It's still the same kind of. And according to OECD, by 2050, without any new policies, the global energy mix in 2050 will not differ significantly from today. We will have a share of oil, fossil energy at about 85%. Renewables, according OECD, will be around 10%, and the rest is going to be nuclear. So we really need to take action on the energy that we are using and move from fossil to renewables at a faster pace, much faster. At the same time, greenhouse gas emissions were in 2017 at 52 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. Without any new policies, emissions would rise to 70 gigatons by the end of the century, which would bring an increase of around 3.5 degrees of Celsius of temperature, which is, we have talked about that different times. It's tremendous for the planet. If we want to achieve the Paris objectives of limiting the temperature increase to 1.5, we need to reduce the global emissions to 39 gigaton of CO2 equivalent by 2030, and be careful at this, minus 10 gigaton CO2 equivalent by end of the century. So we need to become carbon negative, not only carbon neutral. Of course, carbon is around 80% of all the GHG emission. Is not only carbon, but it's the main contributor. So what would really help us is to turn those emissions in zero as soon as possible. Europe is looking at becoming carbon neutral by 2050, and in the future we need to be carbon neutral as well. Carbon negative.
Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. But I think I wanna wrap it up with a call for a call to action and a positive look at this. And now look at the math of sustainability again. Look at that formula, and now look at your life and embrace your responsibilities as a consumer, as a citizen. Look at the opportunities if you're a company or a company member watching this video. So when you do that, don't aspire to be perfect. Aspire to be better. Don't aspire to give lessons. Just aspire to learn. This is a journey that no one can do on his own. This is a journey that we have to do together. There are more and more people convinced that this is a journey worth traveling, and it's only good for all of us. So, Pedro, with this, I think we touched the four main pillars, and I would like also to grab your thoughts.
Well, everybody, it's clear that it's a very big priority, and not only a priority of thoughts, a priority of pragmatic action. So Carlos, what I have to say here is that everything you heard right now gives you a ability of measuring. We cannot change what we cannot measure. And as you can see very well, there are so many measures that help us guide to a better future. And we have the opportunity right now to choose our future. And between the four of us here every week, Carlos, we try to do that. We try to bring fresh information. We try to bring everybody that is listening to us what exactly they can do in order to change things from their organization, because the community that are listening to us are the business community. You are a business leader and you can make better decisions that affect every aspect of the equation that we learned today. But everything starts with you. If you personally can change, you also can change your organization. If your organization can change, it can change the value chain. And if you change the value chain, more and more industries will do better and will be able to have a better future for all of us. So with that, Carlos, Adriana, and Estamatia, I really appreciate once again you coming here this week and sharing such a difficult topic, which is the equation behind sustainability, but I think it was very clear for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you.
That's it, everybody. Thank you very much for your time once again. And I ask you, go and subscribe to the Green Live and to the Sustainable Tech podcast. We really want you to engage with your questions, leave your like, your comments, and make sure that other people have access to this. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.